June 23, 1950. Chicago's Midway Airport buzzes with the ordinary hum of a summer evening. Northwest Airlines Flight 2501 sits on the tarmac, a Douglas DC-4, silver and routine, bound for Seattle with a stop in Minneapolis. 55 passengers, 3 crew members, 58 lives folded into seats, reading newspapers, thinking about home. Captain Robert Lind was an experienced pilot. Nearly 17,000 hours in the air. This was not a man who made careless decisions. The weather that night, however, was anything but ordinary. A violent storm system was churning across the Great Lakes, lightning, turbulence, and winds the forecasters had underestimated. But the flight departed anyway. That decision would define the rest of history. At 11:37 p.m., Flight 2501 was cruising at 3,500 feet over Lake Michigan. Captain Lind radioed air traffic control in Chicago. He requested permission to descend to 2,500 feet, citing deteriorating conditions. The request was denied. Too much traffic below. Lind acknowledged and signed off. That was the last transmission ever received from Northwest Airlines Flight 2501. Within minutes, the plane simply ceased to exist on any radar. No distress call, no explosion reported, no witnesses. One moment, 58 people were suspended over dark water, and the next, they were gone. The lake had swallowed them whole, and it offered nothing in return. By dawn, the largest air-sea rescue operation in U.S. history up to that point was underway. The Coast Guard deployed cutters. The Navy sent aircraft. Civilian boats combed the shoreline from Michigan to Wisconsin. What they found was the stuff of nightmares. Not a plane, but pieces of one. Seat cushions. A section of the floor. A child's shoe. Shredded pieces of clothing caught on the surface like confetti after a celebration that had gone terribly wrong. And then, the worst of it, human remains scattered across miles of dark water, identifiable only in fragments. But no fuselage, no engines, no tail section, no cockpit, no black box. Those didn't even exist in 1950. The answers, whatever they were, had plunged into water that averages 276 feet deep in some sections, and in others, plummets far beyond the reach of any diver. The lake kept the plane, and it intended to keep it forever. For decades, the families grieved without a grave to visit. The official investigation concluded the aircraft encountered catastrophic turbulence, possibly a microburst, possibly structural failure under the stress of the storm. But possibly is not an answer. Possibly is just a polite word for we don't know. And the families knew the difference. In 2004, a team of underwater researchers deployed advanced sonar across the lake beds south of Benton Harbor, Michigan, the most likely impact zone based on flight trajectory calculations. They found anomalies, shapes on the bottom that raised pulses and hopes. Dives were conducted. Each time, the shapes turned out to be geological formations, old anchor chains, a different era's wreckage entirely, not 2501. In 2019, the search began again. New technology, new funding, new hope carried by the grown children and grandchildren of the original victims. Once more, sonar mapped the floor. Once more, targets were identified. Once more, divers went down into that cold, lightless water. And once more, silence. Wrong wreckage, wrong era, wrong answers. Valerie Van Heest, a maritime historian who has dedicated years of her life to this search, described it simply, "The plane is down there. The math says so. The debris pattern says so. But Lake Michigan is vast, cold, and utterly indifferent to human grief." The passengers of Flight 2501 were real people. There was a young couple, newly married, traveling to start their life together. There was a family of 4, 2 parents, 2 children, whose names were printed in the next morning's newspapers beside words no family should ever read. There were businessmen and veterans and a woman who had already survived a war. They were 58 individual stories that all ended the same way. In the dark, over water, without warning, without a last word. Their families grew old, waiting for the phone call that never came. The call that would say, "We found it, we found them, we found your answer." Some of those families are gone now too. They died waiting. And the children who were born after, the grandchildren who inherited this grief secondhand, they are the ones still searching, still hoping that one day, one sonar sweep, one dive, one moment of luck will pull the truth from the bottom of that lake. Lake Michigan does not give back what it takes, but somewhere in 276 feet of darkness, the wreckage of Flight 2501 still sits on the bottom, intact, silent, holding every answer that 58 families deserved and never received. The lake knows what happened on the night of June 23rd, 1950. It just isn't telling.